They said she was just a burden with a pretty face. So her own father gave her away like broken tack in a dusty trade. The desert wind blew mean through Whispering Rock the day Bo Maddox rode in. He sat high in the saddle, jaw set beneath a tattered hat, with the kind of silence that wrapped around a man like an old scar. His coat smelled of horses and rain long gone. His boots carried years of dust. He wasn't the kind folks called neighbor. He wasn't much called anything at all anymore, save for the rancher out near Widow's Hollow, where fence posts leaned like old men and the grass came up dry as paper. Folks said he once shot a man clean through the neck in a cardroom. Others said he buried his own brother with a spade and never cried once. Whispering Rock knew only this. Bo Maddox was trouble that kept to itself. The saloon stank of whiskey, oil lamps, and men who had nothing better to do than rot. Bo moved to the bar with the quiet weight of a man who didn't like company but needed salt, tobacco, and one of those barley cakes Miss Cressy made fresh on Mondays. Sheriff Amos Raleigh spotted him before he even ordered. Amos always did enjoy a stage. "Well now," the sheriff called, swaggering from his corner like a man born in a mirror. His badge gleamed like fool's gold. "Look what the dog dragged in. Thought I smelled a Maddox." Bo gave him a nod. Nothing more. Not until Amos leaned in, voice smooth as oil but thick with venom. "Heard you're still patching up lame horses and rusted windmills. Tell me, you got a taste for mending broken things, Maddox?" "I don't leave things to die if they don't want to," Bo answered dry and flat. His eyes didn't blink. A hush fell. Even the piano stopped its drunken stammer. That's when Amos grinned, the kind of grin a snake might offer right before it bites. "Well then, reckon I got just the thing for you." He clapped twice. Doors swung wide at the back of the saloon, and out she came, wheeled like freight. Clara Raleigh, the sheriff's daughter. Her dark hair was pinned back like something caged. A lace shawl was draped over her shoulders as if to distract from the chair, from the limp, still legs beneath. Her eyes, once bright as river water before the fall, were dulled now, like wet stones. She said nothing, just sat there with a straight back and hands folded tight in her lap, the picture of a woman betrayed by her own body and the man who brought her into this world. "Can't ride, can't walk, can't wed. Ain't much use to me anymore," Amos said, laughing. "Figured you could haul her off. Least she can peel potatoes." The silence that followed wasn't quiet. It was a scream held underwater. Clara's eyes flicked toward Bo. No pleading, no shame, just waiting for a punchline maybe, or a bullet. Bo looked at her like one might look at a stranded colt, worn, wary, and terribly proud despite it. He didn't speak, didn't flinch, just walked forward, slow as thunder. He knelt beside the chair and reached out his hand, not to shake but to steady. Clara blinked once. She placed her fingers in his. "That a yes, Maddox?" Amos called, grinning wider. "No," Bo said. "It's a beginning." He wheeled her out through the saloon doors without another word. By nightfall, the wagon creaked over the ridgeline. Clara sat beside a sack of grain and a lantern that clicked each time the wheel hit a rut. The sky stretched black above them, full of stars and not much else. "You should have left me," she said. Bo didn't look over. "Why?" She stared out into the black. "I ain't who I was. I don't walk. I don't matter." He scratched at his beard, thoughtful. "You think bones are all that makes someone count?" Clara didn't answer. The desert air was cool, and she shivered slightly, but didn't say anything else. Not until they reached the edge of Widow's Hollow, where his ranch sprawled like an old prayer, half whispered, half forgotten. There, under a crooked pine tree and a porch missing 2 boards, he lifted her gently, like lifting a child, though she was not light and not meek. He carried her into the house, placed her in a rocker near the fire, then sat on the opposite side like it was the most natural thing in the world. The silence between them settled like dust. For 2 days, they barely spoke. He built a ramp out back. She watched from the window. He cooked bacon and beans without asking preferences. She ate quietly. On the 3rd day, he left a book of poetry on her lap. On the 4th, she turned a page. The town, meanwhile, crackled with gossip. They called her the ranch cripple, whispered that Maddox had gone soft, said she'd curse his land, ruin his name. Miss Cressy at the general store said she pitied the man stuck with that dead weight. A drunk named Harlan spat and said he'd trade 2 mules before he took a girl like that. Clara heard all of it. She sat outside beneath a willow one evening and wrote a poem in the dirt with a stick, but when Bo came home, she'd already wiped it clean. That night, the wind blew strange, and Clara could not sleep. She wheeled herself onto the porch, breath caught in her chest like a frightened bird. Bo sat there already, lantern glowing low beside him. "You hear what they say?" she asked. "I hear everything," he said. And he took a long pull of coffee, still hot from the fire. Then, with a tone low as earth, let him talk. "Words ain't roots." Clara looked out at the vast stretch of land ahead. "If I could walk, I'd run away." Bo turned to her then, eyes softer than she'd ever seen. "If you could run," he said quietly, "I'd follow." Just then, a sound snapped through the night. Hooves. Fast. Angry. Dust kicked up down the road. 3 riders galloped toward the ranch, torches flaring like ghost light. Bo stood slow, his shadow stretching across the porch like a warning. Clara gripped the armrests of her chair. The riders stopped 10 paces out. One of them barked a name. "Maddox, you've got something belongs to the sheriff." Clara's breath caught. The fire crackled. Bo stepped off the porch without a word. And in that moment, under that endless desert sky, it wasn't clear who they'd come to take or whether they'd survive what came next. The men didn't dismount. They sat their horses like vultures watching the final breaths of the thing. Bo stood 10 paces away, his shirt open at the collar, hands empty, shoulders loose. Clara sat behind him on the porch, her knuckles white where they gripped the arms of her chair, though her face betrayed nothing but silence. "You bring fire to a man's land in the dead of night," Bo said, voice low. "You'd best say your name with a reason." The rider in front leaned forward, revealing a scar like a river bend across his cheek. "Call me Flint. Sheriff says the girl's got a debt on her. Claims this here ranch is payment due." "She ain't property," Bo said. "Everything's property to the man with a badge," Flint replied. "You want to argue? You take it to court. Me, I came to collect." Flint tossed a rolled paper toward Bo's feet. He didn't pick it up, just looked past the riders, into the night where the stars seemed too quiet. Then he stepped back onto the porch and closed the door, not fast, not loud, like a man shutting out a rainstorm he'd seen coming. They didn't light the barn that night. Not yet, but the message had been carried, and the quiet after felt more dangerous than gunfire. Clara didn't speak as Bo set a kettle on the stove. Her breath came tight and shallow. When he turned toward her, she said only, "He means it." "I know," Bo said. "I won't be the reason your life burns down." Bo stirred the flame beneath the kettle. Wasn't much of a life if a sheriff can take it. The next morning, he rode into town alone, brought back a tin of nails, 2 sacks of feed, and a tattered copy of Leaves of Grass. Clara said nothing when he handed it to her, but her fingers lingered on the cover like it held heat. She spent her hours beneath the willow again, now scribbling with charcoal on scraps of sackcloth, words crawling like vines through her fingers. At night, Bo read them aloud beside the fire. He read slow, like each word might break if rushed. They never spoke of the riders again, but Clara knew they were watching. At the mercantile, folks avoided Bo's eye. Miss Cressy offered him sugar for free, out of pity, not kindness. A boy spat at his boots, then ran. And always, above the town like a crow on a fence post, Sheriff Raleigh watched. One evening, Clara rolled to the doorway and found Bo oiling an old revolver on the table. Her voice trembled when she said, "You swore off guns." Bo didn't look up. "I swore off killing. Sometimes, one don't come without the other." She rolled closer, stopping just short of the table's edge. "If you fight him, he'll win, even if you don't fall." Bo finally met her eyes. There was no bravado there, only an old sadness, worn smooth from years of carrying. "I lost a brother in a shootout," he said. "Liam. Full of jokes, full of fire. He got himself killed because I let pride write my rules. I shot the boy who did it. Didn't bring Liam back. Just made everything quieter. Worse." Clara whispered, "You buried your gun." "I buried my name with it." She reached out, and touched the revolver's handle. Her hand was small, but it didn't shake. What if you don't need to unbury either? The silence stretched between them. The next week, Bo built her a lift to the porch, wooden, simple, but crafted with hands that paid attention. Clara laughed when it worked. Not a loud sound, just a breathless flicker of joy he hadn't heard from her yet. The wind changed that night. They came without warning. The barn went up like dry kindling. Flames leapt into the sky, painting the windows with gold. Clara woke to the roar and wheeled herself toward the door, shouting his name. Bo was already outside. Two of the sheriff's men wrestled with the gate, trying to get in. One had a lantern, the other a rifle. Bo tackled the one with fire first. The man fell back hard, hitting the ground with a grunt. The rifle swung toward Bo's back. Clara screamed. Bo turned just as the second man pulled the trigger. The bullet hit high, shoulder, not heart. Bo dropped to one knee, blood seeping through his shirt, but his hands still moved. He brought the revolver up slow, like a man lifting something sacred. One shot, then another. Both men fell. Smoke choked the night, and the barn crackled with collapse. Clara rolled forward into the dust. Her nightgown flared around her legs, pale as moonlight. She reached Bo just as he staggered toward her. He felt his knees beside her chair. "I told you not to fight," she said, hands on his blood-warm shirt. "I didn't fight," he murmured. "I protected what's mine." The world hung on that word. Mine. For a long time, neither moved. The fire died down, leaving only the wreckage, the silence, and the sound of her breathing, ragged but alive. She pressed her forehead to his. "You could have died." Bo's eyes were glassy but calm. "So could you." "I'm already dead in their eyes," she whispered. "Not in mine." Clara looked at the broken barn, then at the man who bled for her, who built ramps in silence and read her words like scripture. "We have to end this," she said. "Not with bullets. With something they can't burn." His brow furrowed. "Ow!" Clara reached for his hand, smeared with soot and blood. By standing, he looked down at her legs, then up at her face. "You can't." Her voice was fierce, not loud. "Then I'll rise another way." In the dark, beneath stars smeared with smoke, Clara pulled herself upright with his help. Her feet never touched the ground, but she stood, on dignity, on fury, on something born between them in the firelight. And from the edge of the property, unseen but not unheard, a rider galloped back to town. The morning broke copper-red, the kind of dawn that tastes of rust and promise. Smoke curled low where the barn had once stood, now a skeleton of ash and memory. Bo stood in the yard, arm wrapped in blood-stained bandage, hammering fresh boards into a fence post with slow, methodical rhythm. Every swing echoed like a heartbeat. Clara sat on the porch in her chair, back straight, hair unbraided, notebook on her lap. She was writing again. They didn't speak of the fire. Not aloud. The space between them held more than enough understanding. Just before noon, they came. 6 riders, clean boots, and polished guns. Sheriff Amos Raleigh led them. Hat low, face a portrait of smug righteousness. Behind him, townsfolk trickled in, drawn like flies to conflict, hungry for spectacle. Miss Cressy stood with her arms crossed, jaw clenched. Even Flint was there, perched on a horse like a man auditioning for violence. "Step aside, Maddox," Raleigh called. "No more fires. No more blood. Just business. That girl belongs to me. You've made your point." Bo didn't move. The hammer hung loose at his side, a nail still between his fingers. "She belongs to no one," he said. Raleigh's lip curled. "She's mine by blood and bond. You think scribbling poems in the dirt makes her more than what she is. This land's not enough to turn a broken girl into a woman." Clara rolled forward. Not fast, not dramatic, just steady. When she reached the edge of the porch, she spoke, voice clear, rising like wind over prairie. "You never gave me love. You gave me shame. You made my legs useless before the fall. Girl, I'm not your girl," she said, louder now. "You left me in that chair like a mule with a broken leg. Told the world I was worthless, then gave me away like I was a joke." Bo stepped beside her, silent. Raleigh's hand went to the butt of his gun. "You raising arms now, Clara? Against your own kin?" "No," she said. "I'm raising myself. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone, a farmhand, nodded slowly. Another stepped forward. Raleigh's men tensed, eyes flicking to their boss, unsure now. "I ain't going back with you," Clara said. "And this land, this man, it's where I found worth. Where I grew again." Flint spat in the dirt. "What's a cripple gonna do? Write poems at us?" Beau reached into his coat and pulled out a slip of paper, black with charcoal. He handed it to the nearest rider, a young deputy who'd never once drawn his weapon. The deputy read aloud, halting. "They call me rootless, ruin, waste. But even rocks birth moss and grace. And where fire took the barn away, I'll plant wildflowers in its place." Silence followed, deep and heavy. Then Clara wheeled forward once more, raised her hand, and dropped something at her father's feet. The deed to the ranch, scrawled in her own hand. "You want it?" she asked. "Take it, but you'll have to burn me next." Raleigh's jaw tightened. His fingers twitched. But the crowd was too close now, too many watching eyes. No clean exit, no clean shot. "You'll regret this," he said. "You'll rot out here." "No," she said, looking at Beau. "I'll grow." The sheriff turned his horse without another word. The riders followed, slower now, uncertain, their silence louder than hooves on dust. Flint looked back once, but said nothing. When the last of them disappeared behind the ridge, the townsfolk remained. One by one, quietly, they walked toward the house. A sack of seed from the blacksmith's wife. A plank of wood from the general store. Eggs. Salt. A letter for Clara from the schoolteacher, asking if she might come read her poems to the children one day. No one said sorry. Not directly, but hands that once pointed now helped carry. Judgment softened. The ranch, once shunned, now stood as something else entirely. In the weeks that followed, Clara tended to the garden she started long ago. The soil was scorched, but she worked it gently, day after day. Beau built her a bench beneath the willow tree, where she could write with the wind in her hair. He rarely spoke of the fire, or the wound in his shoulder, or the barn they lost. But each nail he hammered into new boards said more than apologies could. One evening, after a rain, Beau walked out to find Clara standing. It wasn't perfect. Her cane wobbled in the mud, her steps small and uneven, but she stood, alone, silhouetted by twilight, mouth slightly open as if surprised by her own body. He didn't rush to her, didn't cry out. He just walked to her side and placed his hand on her shoulder. "You always saw it," she whispered. He nodded once, was never blind. That night, they danced, awkward and slow on the porch, lit by lantern light. No music, just the rhythm of breath, of steps learned through pain and earned through patience. She leaned her head against his chest. "Still think I was a joke?" she asked, half a smile on her lips. Beau kissed the top of her head. "You were the punchline that changed the story." Years later, they'd say the girl who couldn't walk taught a town how to stand. Some said Beau Maddox tamed the land, and the sheriff too. Others claimed Clara Raleigh planted words so powerful they cracked open hearts. But those who were there know the truth. That love, born not of pity but of presence, can take root in the most unlikely soil. And sometimes, when you're discarded by the world, it's just because you were meant to grow wild. So if they ever say you're too broken, too burdened, too late, remember Clara. She was never saved. She bloomed.